Hey guys, welcome to Get Busy Watching. I'm your host, Honest Dan. Let's talk movies. Welcome to week 2 of my Halloween special. Let's get this show on the road. Number 1. Possession. No intro, never seen it, heard it was good, that was enough for me. After returning home from a mysterious job, Mark learns that his wife Anna has been unfaithful and doesn't want to be with him anymore. Mark is obsessed with keeping Anna and is willing to do whatever it takes to keep her around. However, unbeknownst to him, Anna is harboring a grotesque monster and feeds it people that attempt to visit her. What in the flying fuck did I just fucking watch? Holy fucking shit, this is one of the most batshit things I've seen in a damn long time. Before you ask, no, I have no idea what this movie is truly about. My little summary, a rudimentary summary, meant for a dog, not a human being. To describe this movie in earnest would be impossible. Is this gonna be a theme for me this month? Come on, movies, give my brain a break. Anyway, in case you can't tell from my tone, I freaking love this movie. It makes no sense. Alright, let me confess a little here. I am aware that it's an allegory for divorce. I had to look that shit up, but I opted not to read further into it. I had way more fun with this just enjoying the utter insanity. The acting is... over-the-top acting doesn't quite cover it. It's more like over-the-top finds a power drill and violently obliterates the top until there's nothing left but an empty base. That doesn't make any sense to you? Then welcome to my headspace for the last 2 hours. I've seen bad teen dramas with more subtle acting than this. All these two characters do is scream and shout at each other. I would swear to God, I was watching Crazy White People the movie. It took me almost halfway through the flick just to realize that all of this had to be symbolic of something. None of what I was watching had to be taken literal. What this movie was symbolic of was well beyond my understanding as I was watching it. While I wouldn't necessarily classify it as scary, there are a couple of fucked up scenes that make your skin crawl, and one in particular nearly caused me to lose my lunch, but it leans more in the direction of psychologically disturbing. If you found this movie legit great, more power to you, but as for me, I enjoyed it in my own way. My honest rating for Possession, a 5 out of 5. Number 2. Insidious Chapter 2. Funny story about me in this franchise. I started with the 4th entry, The Last Key, which as I understand it is actually the 2nd installment in terms of chronological order. Yeah, so apparently it goes like Chapter 3, which is a prequel to the other 2 movies, then The Last Key, which is the 4th movie that was made, and then it goes Insidious Chapter 1, and then Chapter 2, which is the final entry. Raise your hand if you're confused. As for The Last Key, I thought it was not really good, but not that bad. It had some cool ideas regarding the realm of the dead. It was interesting enough that I wanted to check out the rest of the franchise, so there's that. And I did end up checking out that first movie. And I thought, well, it's been a while since I've seen it, but I remember it being alright. Like, I mean, James Wan and horror usually go pretty well together, but I don't think it's better than The Conjuring. I think very few movies are better than The Conjuring, but it was worth it. Rose Byrne and Patrick Wilson are always a good time. But now, it's time to check out the 2nd movie that was made, but the 4th installment in chronological order. Yes, your headache does amuse me. Picking up after the events of the first movie, saving their son from the further thanks to his dad Josh, and the death of Elise Rainier, Renee Lambert is in denial that her family is free from ghostly danger, despite her husband Josh telling her that everything is okay. But the hauntings begin again and start terrorizing both Renee and her mother-in-law, Lorraine. Lorraine takes it upon herself to track down Elise's old associates to find out what kind of spirit they're dealing with. All the while, Renee is dealing with her possessed husband. It's okay, I guess. Okay, positives. As I stated before, Wilson and Byrne always churn turn out solid performances, and burn in something that isn't a subpar comedy is always a welcome change of pace. I will also admit, for a minimalist design, Mother's actress Danielle Bisutti really brings a chilling threat to the monster and got a few decent scares out of me. I also really enjoy the semi-time traveling aspects within the Further itself and how the events playing out in the present affected the previous film. But that's all I had in terms of positives. The rest of the movie flirts with being a chore to sit through. First off, what did Renee see on that camera? We know from the end of the first flick that Josh had something to do with Elise's death, but we spend pretty much the entire first half with her in complete denial. Nothing's wrong because Josh says nothing's wrong, even though everything points to the contrary. But she doesn't try to take measures in protecting her children or herself. Half her problems were closer to self-inflicted than actual obstacles in her way. I also don't really know why this flick needed two ghostly villains. I get the theme is parenting or something to that effect, but I feel like only Parker Crane truly needed to be the vengeful spirit, and Mother simply a detail of how he became what he was in life and subsequently in death. I did complain in both Last Key and the original film that the comic relief, Specs and Tucker, were annoying. They still are here, though not as egregious. Still, I would pay to see an Insidious movie without Specs and Tucker. Honestly, it's more of the same from the original, except done slightly worse. Not a bad watch, the on-screen talent makes it all okay, but that's the best way to describe this movie. Okay. My honest rating for Insidious Chapter 2, a 3 out of 5. Number 3. Frankenweenie. Second week in a row with a Tim Burton film. I've never seen it. I know, out of all the films that he did in the 2010s, this, I hear, is one of the few good ones. But then again, when Tim Burton does animation, that's usually when he's at his best. I can safely say that I'm excited. I'm still waiting for an apology for Dumbo, though. Victor Frankenstein is a loner kid, but enjoys making movies with his dog Sparky. After some urging from his father to try sports, Sparky chases a baseball that Victor hit and accidentally gets run over by a car and passes away. Despite his grief, Victor is inspired by his science teacher to bring his dog back to life, using electricity, which ends up working. However, keeping Sparky's resurrection a secret proves difficult as more and more people see him, and even some kids want to exploit Victor's knowledge to their own ends. Wow. Okay, what a movie! This was great! On the surface, you wouldn't think this was anything special, just taking the original Frankenstein story and making the characters kids. But what Burton does, the imagination, the creativity, the creepy atmosphere, the humor, but most importantly, the heart and charm, he makes it work wonders. I love the character designs, very old school Burton. Perhaps a little too Burton-y, if that's a thing. Seriously, the weird girl, which is literally how she's credited, is terrifying in her design, and I kinda love it. It gives me nightmares, and I love it. I love the cutesy take on Sparky being Frankenstein's monster and Elsa's poodle as the bride of Frankenstein. That was really clever, I thought. And their cute little relationship was quite heartwarming. And also, that climax, with all the deformed monster versions of all the animals, that was so much fun. But with all that said, I do have my negatives. Not many, and they're probably nitpicks, so don't fret. I love Winona Ryder, both as a person and an actress, so I was bummed that Elsa wasn't a more prominent character. To boot, I feel like making her a Van Helsing is kinda meaningless if she's not gonna be in on the action saving the day with Victor. It just feels tacked on so people can go, Van Helsing, I know that character! And I won't lie, I kinda hate the ending. It's impossible to talk about it without giving anything away, but it has the perfect opportunity to teach kids a valuable lesson, but ultimately doles out an easy, sappy ending. Still, with all that said, the beautiful animation, the interesting take on this timeless tale, the heart and soul of the story, it's definitely one worth checking out. My honest rating for Frankenweenie, a 4 out of 5. Number 4. Rosemary's Baby. No prolonged intro. Always wanted to see it. Never did. Fuck Roman Polanski. Rosemary Woodhouse and her actor husband Guy have just moved into a new apartment with a history and meet their quirky elderly neighbors, Minnie and Roman, and get close when they experience a tragedy. Rosemary and Guy at long last try for a baby, but almost as soon as her pregnancy is confirmed, Rosemary is prescribed a new doctor by Minnie and Roman, who gives her unorthodox medical advice. However, Rosemary slowly learns that the people around her may not be who they say they are, and may in fact be a coven of witches. I don't know how to feel about this one. On the one hand, I can objectively say that it's well written. I dare say if you wanted a textbook definition on how to write engaging and sympathetic characters, this is a prime example that you can turn to. Couple that with extraordinary casting and acting, and you've technically got a winning formula on your hands. And the one dream sequence with Rosemary surrounded by the coven of witches, offering her up to the devil, is chilling in how it's shot, and how visceral it feels as all this fucked up stuff is happening to her, but she isn't reacting properly. I was really into the helplessness of how it felt. However, this segues into my main issue with the movie. It doesn't feel like a horror film at all, but rather a quirky drama, especially with how over the top the castavetes, especially Minnie, feel in their acting. Hell, I would swear I was in a romantic comedy in some places. The creeps and chills are pretty rare. The beginning takes too long to establish the history of the setting and character relationships. Yes, there are some odd moments here and there, and I do appreciate that there is a mystery. Was that dream of Satan raping Rosemary real? Are the castavetes really involved? But here's the problem. The movie is labeled as a horror film, so chances are the Satan rape scene was real. The truth is, I don't feel the horror elements kick in until maybe about an hour into the story. Yes, I understand that the slow increase in paranoia is where the terror is supposed to be, but it's not enough to keep me up at night, and the payoff was pretty obvious. Honestly, I didn't feel like the movie truly started until the third act. Just as I was getting more involved in the story, that's when it ends, and it's not even a satisfying ending. If there's some underlying meaning or symbolism to the story, then I'm not seeing it, and probably factors into my underwhelmed feeling. I say it's overrated, not technically a bad flick, but not my cup of tea. My honest rating for Rosemary's Baby, a weak 3 out of 5. Number 5. Suspiria. I actually have seen this one before, and not that long ago. And I fucking hated it. I thought this was so obnoxious. There was very rarely a quiet moment, which you would think is what sets the atmosphere for any scary movie. There's obviously more to my hate for this movie than just that, but everywhere I went, it seemed like people were talking about this like it was one of the great horror films ever made. Did I miss something? What? The only reason why I'm coming back to this is because maybe I remember it wrong. Maybe the constant noise was just in my head or not nearly as dramatic as I remember it. I don't know, man. All I know is that I had to watch it again to make sure that it's truly as bad as I remember. Susie Banyan is a young American woman who has traveled to Germany to train in the prestigious dance academy there. She arrives just in time to learn of one of the dancers running away and having been brutally murdered at a hotel. Though her own time in the academy is fine at first, making friends, she finds herself constantly unwell and increasingly strange things happening. Soon, she learns that the academy has a dark history involving a witch coven, and that the history may not be buried when Susie's friend Sarah disappears. Geez, I guess a second viewing really does help sometimes. Oh, I still don't like it, but it's not nearly as bad as I remember. Let's start with what improved. The soundtrack was not as relentlessly loud and irritating as I remember. Outside of the main theme, which I still love dearly, it can get grating, but it's not that bad. I will also admit that there are bursts of brutally satisfying surprises, like the dog attack, and I do really enjoy the ending for the creative sets and the production value as a whole. But now this segues into pretty much every problem I have with the thing. I don't care. I'm sure that it was never Dario Argento's intention to make a straightforward horror film with Shakespearean characters and an upfront narrative, but what he does do is not my cup of tea, and occasionally feels cheap and even comical. One of the characters in the beginning gets stabbed by a random hand with a knife off camera. The writing and acting every once in a while feels like something out of a Disney TV movie, but mostly just doesn't grip me. It's so not subtle that there's a brief moment when a light from a crystal or whatever shines in Susie's eyes and you just hear "witches" randomly. Gee, thanks movie. And of course, the protagonist Susie is probably one of the most useless protagonists ever, spending most of the movie asking questions, looking freaked out, and being sick or sleeping, only jumping in to contribute to the plot at the end of the second act. I know this is beloved by horror movie enthusiasts, and if you get something out of it, hey, don't let me take that away from you. But I just can't connect with this one. I vastly prefer the remake. My honest rating for Suspiria, a weak 3 out of 5. Number 6. Wallace and Gromit, The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. I love Aardman animation, almost on principle, but Wallace and Gromit is a downright delightful classic for me. They don't make too many feature-length movies, but it's high time that we remind our inner children, as well as our actual children, that this exists and needs to not only be remembered, but watched. I'm so excited to talk about this. Wallace and Gromit are celebrated heroes for catching the resident rodent rabbits that make a nasty habit of eating the townsfolk's vegetables. This is especially concerning since the giant vegetable competition is mere days away. Wallace invents a machine that's supposed to take away the rabbits' desire for vegetables and is successful, perhaps too well, as the test rabbit turns into a giant ravenous were-rabbit that causes much destruction around town. Wallace and Gromit do their very best to catch the beast, but it's not long before Gromit realizes that there may be more to the beast than initially realized. Before we get started, I'm gonna tell everyone to get on Netflix and watch Shaun the Sheep Adventures from Mossy Bottom. Aardman needs love, y'all. Onward. Oh my god, I feel like a kid again. I love this movie! Wallace and Gromit are still as charming as they've ever been, from the cheese-loving, eccentric Wallace to the more silent, level-headed pooch Gromit. They're just an unbeatable duo in hilarity. The creativity behind their gadgets, the cute designs of the rabbits themselves, the adorably hammy line deliveries from the voice talent, even the little close-up details of seeing the fingerprints on the characters, it all adds charm and is a reminder of just how amazing stop-motion animation is. It only gets more impressive each time I see it, which isn't nearly as often as I wish. But I need to make this an annual watch. Every scene is filled to the brim with fun set pieces, action, and witty comedy that both kids and adults can get into. It's simple, it's fun, it's a must-see for all kids and pretty much just anyone who's anyone. My honest rating for Wallace and Gromit, The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, a 5 out of 5. And last but not least, number 7, Silent Hill. I don't remember this one too well. I think the last time I saw it was when it came out in DVD, way back when. I never played the games. I wasn't a fan of horror back in the 90s and 2000s. Hell, I wasn't even on board the Resident Evil bandwagon until Resident Evil 5. And even then, only with friends. I mean, I guess I did play a few hours worth of the Resident Evil 1 remake on GameCube. I played a little bit of the Resident Evil 3 original, Code Veronica as well, and bits and pieces of Resident Evil 4, but never an entire playthrough. But as I understand it, the Silent Hill series is considered to be the superior franchise. Though I've never played the games, I've always taken a fascination with the hideous monsters that come out and attack the players. So I've always had a morbid curiosity regarding the games. But since I'm not likely to play the games anytime soon, I'll just have to settle for the 2 movies. 2? Are you kidding me? Well, the 1 for now. I don't know if I want to see the sequel. We'll see. It depends on my mood. Video game adaptation cringe, here I come. Sharon is the adopted daughter of Rose and Christopher. She has a tendency to sleepwalk and talks in her sleep about a mysterious town called Silent Hill, where Sharon was originally from. Determined to help her discover what it all means, Rose and Sharon go on a road trip to find Silent Hill, a documented ghost town. However, the trip goes south when Rose accidentally crashes her car and is rendered unconscious, waking up to find that Sharon is gone. Though Rose finds herself in Silent Hill, and as she follows a mysterious young girl who looks like Sharon, also encounters hellish creatures. I mean, it's not good per se, but it's not without merit. The beginning does not start strong. It's heavy-handed in religious imagery, and the writing, and subsequently the acting, are sappy. Characters don't act realistically, from kids treating cops like strangers, probably more relevant and smart now than back in 2006, to Sybil randomly pulling over Rose, Sybil never taking off that fucking helmet of hers, to Rose randomly speeding off from the cop. Everything feels like a desperate attempt to introduce characters and things to happen just to get to the main story without an organic flow to it. But pretty much as soon as we get to Silent Hill itself, things do kind of pick up. While the CGI on the monsters do not hold up at all, in fact the CG is quite atrocious as a whole, the creativity on the more humanoid monsters do look and move appropriately creepy. They're not as creatively symbolic as their video game counterparts. In fact, any connection to its psychological roots are pure speculation or only surface level in meaning. I guess this would be fine in a Silent Hill film adaptation, but it could be pushed further. I do kind of enjoy how there's an alarm to represent when the otherworld hellscape will descend on the characters, so we know that something scary is about to happen. A signature of the film, to be sure. And of course, Pyramid Head is pretty damn cool and seemingly well executed. But the cardinal sin of the flick is how the overall story makes no sense. Even when the climactic ending comes around and tries to explain everything, it doesn't always add up, or even makes things more confusing. It's a hollow feeling that isn't satisfying in the least. Overall, not the worst of film adaptations of video games in terms of entertainment and creativity, but certainly nowhere near the best in terms of quality. Very lowbrow horror, but if that's your baggage, then you might enjoy this. My honest rating for Silent Hill, a 3 out of 5.
Thanks so much for watching, you guys. I really appreciate it. Have a great day. Stay safe and healthy out there. Please wear a mask if you go out. Hope to see you soon.